Okay, let's add a sky and to our scene here, and then I'll talk to you about textures and something else about render settings. So, to make a sky object, this is new. Like we've been working with the lights. Well, there's two icons over. There's this grid pattern. It's actually a floor, which we'll deal with later in the semester. Hit the drop-down menu and choose sky. Not physical sky, but just choose sky. And this creates like a sphere object that like it extends out infinitely far away. So just for the heck of it, let's just do the render view to see what we got so far. And not much of a dramatic change, although the maybe a little bit. I can barely tell. The first thing I want to do is add some color to our sky, and this is brand new stuff. The so far we haven't dealt with this area of our workspace. This is the materials manager down here, and we can create a new material which holds the color and many other attributes that we can apply to an object. And the easiest way to do it is just to double click in this blank space, and this little icon will come up, MAT for material. If you click on it, eventually, there it goes, this window will open, and it's called it's default to matte, and the color is kind of this whitish boring color. Let's give the sky like a little bit of a blue tint, but first of all, let's call this sky. A lot of times I like to call it sky text, sky texture, just so, but that's just me. Okay, so the sky object will affect the lighting, so you have to be careful with the color. All I'm going to do for this first texture that we created is come over here to the color. And I guess I should mention, these are the channels for the texture. And we will go through these and use a whole bunch of them throughout this course. Right now we're on the color channel. So the word color should be highlighted. Keep all the defaults for now. We can change the color anything we want to. But for this sky object, I'm just going to grab the slider of the blue, and I get a readout of like what it wants. And I don't want it, I don't want to like overdo it with the oversaturated colors. So let's just set this blue value to 10%, and that should do it. Okay, then we can. There's no like save button on these things or anything, or accept or whatever. Just close it. Now you can drag the sky texture and just drop it on an object within your viewport. To me, it's much better to just drag it right onto the object into the object manager. So when you made our sky, here's our little sky object. There's no tags on it yet. So watch what happens. I'm going to click and hold sky text down here in my material. Drag it all the way up yonder, drop it on the sky, and then it has a materials tag now. And it, visibly altered in the viewport. So now let's hit render view, and you can see there's a slight change and life is starting to come into this model here. Let's add so texture to the snow, not to the snowman. I just want to add it to the landscape just so we can get an idea of what's going to happen here. In the materials manager, another way to make a material is you can hit create new material. There's the keyboard shortcut to make a new material if you want to use that. Personally, I just like to double click down here. Okay, so we made this new material, matte. Double click on it, open in a window. Let's call this snow. And at this point, I don't know if I might have the snowman a slightly different color than the landscape, but I am not sure yet. So I think that this is okay. We'll just keep the default white for now. You can close the window. You don't have to save it again, like I said before. Whoops, I forgot to rename it. Gonna call this snow. I didn't hit return there. Okay, now it's cool. All right, snow. Close that. I'm gonna drop this snow texture on the landscape in the materials, or in the in the object manager. So here I am. I'm gonna drop it, and there's my little snow texture. Let's do render view again, and it changed a little bit, but it's still pretty ugly. There's a render setting that changes a whole bunch of how the stuff is viewed. Up here we've been using render view, and this is render to picture viewer, which we'll do later on. This clapboard with the gear icon next to it is render settings. So if I open that up, there's, let's see, to get to the effect that I want, you have to click effect, and there's a whole bunch of stuff here that we'll cover some of it but not all of it during this course. But the one thing I want you to enable is global illumination. So I open render settings, effect, global illumination, and I can close this. Now let's do a render view, and something's changed here. First of all, it takes a lot longer to render, so that's something to keep in mind. The global illumination takes into account the sky object as a source of illumination, for one thing. Secondly, it gives it the calculations used to calculate reflections and how light bounces off stuff is much more sophisticated. You notice though it uses a heck of a lot of RAM, whenever we process it, so that's really something to keep in mind when we get into these very complex projects that have multiple lights and so on. Global illumination will add to your render time quite a bit. So that's all I want to cover in this video. Just a review. We made textures, and the sky is the let me double click on it eventually. Come on, there you go. It's just 10% blue for the sky texture. Remember to name stuff. The snow texture, I just kept it at the default white. All I did was name it snow. The render settings, global illumination should be enabled, and the way you get to that is click on an effect, and you got a whole bunch of stuff down here. Don't get crazy with messing with this, especially like something like hair render. You could crash your computer if you do it wrong. So global illumination is enabled in render settings, and let's save our file, and I'll see you in the next video.